So Bitcoin crashed to 58,000 yesterday on the largest liquidation event in 6 months. And everyone is wondering what comes next. The bears are pointing to BlackRock sending another 300 million to Coinbase, and as well as the massive options expirations happening as we speak today. But the bulls are pointing towards the whales buying and Charles Schwab rolling out Bitcoin trading yesterday. But before we get into all that, let's listen to this quote-unquote Bitcoin expert on CNBC to hear what they think.
Strategies founder and managing partner and a CNBC contributor. I'd like to talk about a lot of different things, Kate, like even gold. But let's talk first about Bitcoin, because 59,000 for months has been something that you said was important. And this is how many times have we seen it tests 59?
Yeah, this is probably the third test.
And is it going to hold? And if it doesn't, I was talking the other day about if it didn't hold, and it wasn't you, I don't think, but someone told me some terrible number about where it could go if it broke 59.
It's not to say the bottom drops out, but the next support, the next major support, we're talking low 40s.
I heard even worse. I heard someone say even worse than that.
That can't be unheard of for Bitcoin, knowing the volatility. It's down about 30% after failing right at that 200-day moving average. It was almost perfect right there as resistance. So that continues to be resistance. It's obviously trending lower. The good news for Bitcoin traders or investors is that we have a long-term oversold condition, and it's been in place for a duration at which it usually starts to impact the chart. So we're looking for stabilization. Ideally, it does happen in this range because it is a key Fibonacci retracement level below which oftentimes a full retracement happens. So we're hoping to see it. 60,000 is also a key level as well.
Okay, so it's down 60% from the high, or 50 and change?
Close to that.
So not 80. And other drawdowns before it was as institutionally accepted and there were no ETFs. So people, a lot of people, the bulls that we have on, say this might not be a full drawdown like we've seen in the past, and we could be near something now. You think there's any merit to that argument?
I think we can still see those 75, 80% drawdowns, but as a technician, I almost see the volatility as opportunity. And when we do have those big drawdowns, which we can avoid using those trend following gauges, then of course you have an opportunity to ride the relief rally, and those can be just equally violent, as you know. So I'm a Bitcoin bull from a very, very long-term perspective. I'm not really on board with these 4-year cycles. We don't have enough of them to feel confident in them. But I'm always looking for signs of downside exhaustion for that opportunity. And
it's just human nature. And you could use this in any market, but it's at 125, it's like, oh my God, it's too high. I can't buy it. I'd love to buy it. I can't buy it at 125. I would love it. At 60, it's like, I'm not buying that.
It's market psychology.
So even people that wanted to buy it at 125 are afraid to buy it at 60.
Really hard to buy it into weakness, but it is often the right thing to do. We like to see a little convincing shift in momentum before adding exposure. And because support is being tested so hard, ideally we see even a couple, 3 weeks of stabilization here before feeling convinced it's holding.
All right, so we're at the part in the movie where CNBC is even bringing, quote unquote technicians or analysts on legacy media, and they're trying to essentially chart boy or chart woman in this case, where the price of Bitcoin's going. The only part I fundamentally disagree with her on is how she mentioned the 4-year cycle, even though the 4-year cycle theory is the only theory that has remained intact. And for some reason, most of the community has been very against that theory. I've been saying this since October. I think the 4-year cycle's in play. It's playing out like it always has been. This time wasn't different. That was there was a whole theory as to why this was different, because the institutions are here, because of the amount of Bitcoin that Michael Saylor was buying, because of the approval coming from the White House, the approval coming from the administration. But if you look at the facts, if you look at the data, 4-year cycle's intact. But we're going to get into more of that in a little bit. But before we get to that, I did mention liquidations in the beginning of the show. This is huge. This is massive. This was the largest liquidation event since the infamous October 10th dump, right? The catastrophe, you could call it the sabotage that was going on the Binance CZ side, however way you want to look at it. But yes, it was a massive, massive drawdown. And it's funny. I don't know if it's the Bitcoin whales doing this, but we're back at 58K. 58K has become like a meme at this point. I don't know if they're trolling us or whatnot. So check this out as well. BlackRock just deposited $340 million worth of Bitcoin and Ethereum to Coinbase Prime. Why are they doing that? You could make the case that they're, they want to sell it on behalf of their clients, et cetera, et cetera. Also, check out this graph from Econometrics. Bitcoin below 60K shouldn't surprise anyone watching ETF flows. The last 30 days has been seen some spectacular days of selling, but they're really being defined by relentless selling. Almost every recent trading session has seen capital leave the spot Bitcoin ETFs, creating one of the most persistent stretches of outflows since the fund's launch. That's the kind of demand shock that keeps pushing prices lower. Now, again, going back to the 4-year cycle theory, this is where me and the quote-unquote CNBC expert fundamentally disagree, because at the end of the day, you have to look at the facts, right? And you could feel whatever way you want to feel about the 4-year cycle. You can call it a meme, you could call it whatever you want to call it. The matter of fact is that the 4-year cycle is completely intact. It has not broken. And until it breaks, I'm going to look at that as an indicator, because every other indicator, including the power law, I might add, has broken at this point. So the only thing that has not broken is the 4-year cycle theory. And the 4-year cycle theory, as much as she said we don't have enough data points, literally since the inception of Bitcoin, since the very early days of Bitcoin, the 4-year cycle has played out to a T every single time. So for you to have the hubris to say, oh no, I just don't believe in it, again, it requires a little bit of common sense, a little bit of humility to be like, maybe there's something to this, right? So here's Benjamin Cohen, very famous, crypto/Bitcoin YouTuber. He just hit 1 million subscribers, I might add. Congratulations to him. It says, while this bear market feels different, Bitcoin is still tracking the average of prior midterm year bear markets. Structurally, the market typically gets one final counter-trend rally sometime in the summer before the final lows occur later in the year. So good news at least. At least we're going to get a counter trend, which is fantastic. But Ben's making the case, and by the way, I'm in this camp as well, that, and I'll more clearly define my camp. And I've been saying this for the last couple months. If we stay between the 80 and 60K region over the summer, I think that there's a very high probability that we could have bottomed. But we didn't stay between the 80 and 60K region. We made lower lows. We broke down below 60K. So Ben's making the case that, yes, we could have a counter trend rally in the summer. It'd be great. I think everyone would get excited, say, hey, look, the worst is past us. But historically speaking, if Bitcoin behaves like every other cycle, the bottom should be around Q3 or Q4 of this year before things start to pick up. I'm personally very bullish about 2027. I think we'll be back above 100K in 2027. I think it's going to be a great year. It's typically the year after the euphoric year, which we never had this year, that tends to be the bearish year, which is 2026, or as Ben pointed out, the midterm year. Now, more so on the bullish side of things, check this out. Here is Mitch from Blockware, and he says, plebs are aggressively buying the dip. Yesterday was the second highest single day increase in the holding of users with 0.01 to 1 Bitcoin since the start of the epoch. An asset with finite supply and a hardcore holder base willing to go down with the ship means a bottom will be found. This is what I was talking about yesterday about the Bitcoin fundamentalists, about the Bitcoin maximalists. You guys ultimately are the ones that hold the line because you guys are here for the revolution. You guys are not here for number go up. Number go up is a byproduct of being a revolutionary. Number go up and getting wealthier is a byproduct of being a believer in Bitcoin. If you're here for number go up purely, you're going to spaz out. We played you guys that montage of all those like mainstream influencers basically saying, I'm selling Bitcoin. It's gone. It's broken. It's going to zero. You saw all the videos yesterday. But if you're a Bitcoin revolutionary, and I keep emphasizing this, like, why are you here? We have to remember the mission. I was having a conversation with Larry Lepard yesterday. The podcast should drop later on this week. And we were talking about this. Like, fundamentally, we're here to fix the money, fix the world. And if you're here to fix the money, fix the world, you need to have a different mindset about why you're here. What is your conviction? Because again, if you're here just to get rich, the shiny new toys like the SpaceX IPO or, you know, those AI, the AI IPOs or any of those stocks, they're going to get your attention. But ultimately, none of those things are going to give you sovereignty, which is the whole point of Bitcoin. The whole point of Bitcoin is reclaiming back your financial sovereignty by buying it, earning it, mining it, and putting it into self-custody. And then if enough of us do that, we will fundamentally win. So it seems like plebs are buying the dip. So it's not only whales, plebs are buying the dip as well. I was looking a stat, I think it came from, I think it was Strike, it was Jack Mahler's. So that 97% of the volume yesterday was people buying Bitcoin. So people are looking at this and they're seeing it as an opportunity. And I'll tell you what, guys, like, listen, even if we do make lower lows, like even if we do go into the 40Ks, which I'm kind of trending to, looking back 2 years from now, you're going to be looking at back these prices. I don't think it's going to make a very big difference whether you bought a Bitcoin, whether you bought Bitcoin at 59K, whether you bought Bitcoin at 50K or at 40K. You're never going to be able to time the absolute bottom. But what I can tell you is that if you're buying Bitcoin right now, you're getting it at a 52% discount, which is absolutely massive. Check out this post from Bitfinex. Wallets holding 1,000 Bitcoin are adding while the market sells. So these are the whales. They're back near the top of their 6-month range as price retraced to the low 60s. This is whales accumulating, not broad demand. The setup stays defensive until ETF flows return. And again, you have to take into account whales are people that fundamentally got into Bitcoin early. Like if you have 1,000 Bitcoin, you are a class of 2015, you're a class of 2011, you're a class of 2012. You've gone through multiple market cycles. You've seen this movie play out before. The reason I knew in October that the party was over is because I remember the feeling of the last two bull runs and bear markets. I remember the feeling. I was like, yep, that was the top. And I remember that exact same feeling. It's like this gut-wrenching feeling. The way that I describe it to everybody is if you're at a party and they just turn the lights on, that's kind of like the same feeling that you get when the party's over. And then some people go into denial and say, no, we could still go higher. But some people come to the realization even quicker and they're like, yeah, you know what? That was the cycle. Unfortunately, it didn't perform to our expectations, but I would say that was a good thing. And the reason I'm saying that's a good thing is because this cycle is fundamentally different than the previous cycles. And I'll explain to you why. The previous cycles, the Bitcoin community had the expectation and the certainty that once we got out of the bottom, we were going to guarantee reach new highs. This is the first time that I'm getting messages from, I even had a conversation with my wife about this. This is the first time that I'm getting messages from Bitcoiners that have been in the game for like 10 years. And they're like messaging me and they're like doubting it. And that's a good thing. And that comes from the expectation of Bitcoin having a euphoric blow off top. It didn't come. So essentially you waited for 4 years and there was no reward. And that's where the disillusionment comes in. But I would say that creates a massive opportunity because it reminds me of the 2013, 2014, 2015 bear market, where essentially people were so disillusioned after the blow up of Mt. Gox that there was no certainty that Bitcoin was going to recover. But that was the most opportune time. If you were buying Bitcoin at those levels, at those prices, at the $300 level, the $500 level, you rode it all the way up to $20,000. So $300 to $20,000. Even when Bitcoin made its retracement from 20,000 to 3,500, if you bought at $300 or $500, you're still basically 10x up on your investment. right? So I think that this bear market in particular, because of the amount of disillusionment, because of the shiny toy distractions in the IPOs, whether the AI IPOs or the SpaceX IPOs, I think we're seeing a very similar setup. That once Bitcoin starts to run up again, people are not going to believe it. They're going to take their experience from this cycle and they're going to project it onto the future cycle, expecting the same thing to happen, expecting Bitcoin to disappoint them like it has in the past. One of the things that I said in January of 2025, I never forget this. I was telling Opti, is when Trump got elected, our views were crazy. Everyone was euphoric. I would say that was the euphoric top of the cycle, not the price top, but the euphoric top. I was telling Opti, I was like, listen, one of the things that worries me a little bit is that everyone and their mother is 100% certain that by the end of 2025, we're going to have this crazy euphoric blow off top. But newsflash, that's not how markets work. If everyone is expecting the market to do the exact same thing, it doesn't usually pan out too well. So let's check out this other post. Net buying of Bitcoin is increasing on Coinbase. But again, I think that this is more of like a short-term conversation. And then the other thing that I mentioned in the intro is Charles Schwab, one of the largest brokerages in the United States. Again, if, you know, part of the older generation, you know, you're part of that whole, you know, stock buying by the S&P 500. This is the platform that you're using. And while this bear market is occurring, they're rolling out the ability for their clients to buy spot Bitcoin on their platform. So the infrastructure is being built out in the bear market so that when the bull market does return, new pools of capital are going to get exposure, not to ETF Bitcoin, but to spot Bitcoin. Now, it's not the same thing. I don't know if Charles Schwab is going to give the ability for clients to withdraw from Charles Schwab and take that Bitcoin into self-custody, but this is why I love free markets. Ultimately, PayPal didn't allow that functionality when it initially rolled out spot Bitcoin trading, but their hands were forced because they were trying to compete with Cash App. So if Charles Schwab is going to try to compete with Coinbase or any of the Bitcoin-only exchanges, eventually they're going to have to roll out that withdrawal feature as well. I'm calling it. Also, River came out with this very nice graph, and they said each Bitcoin bear market is shallower than the last because the wave of high conviction buyers gets stronger every year. So it shows all the different bear markets that we've endured as Bitcoiners. So the 2011 bear market, we went from $31 to $2.14. That's a 93% discount. The following bear market of 2013, 2015, which, by the way, this bear market right now, it reminds me of that bear market because of the amount of disillusionment. We had an 87% drawdown. We went from $1,163 all the way down to $152. Then 2017, 2018, that was about where I got involved. We went from $19,800 to $3,200. That was an 84% drawdown. The 2021-2022 bear market, we went from $69K to $15,500. That's a 77% drawdown. And the 2025 to 2026 bear market, we went from $126K down to $58,000. We're currently at a 53% drawdown. But take a look at the duration. I think this is the most important part, which is look at the similarities in the drawdown duration between all the cycles. They're roughly the same. It's roughly between 14 and 12 months. We're only at the 9-month mark. Like I said earlier on in the stream, I think that the summer is ultimately what's going to determine the price action of Bitcoin for the rest of the cycle. I think that these summer months, so July, where are we at the end of July? Where are we at the end of the next month? Where are we on a price basis? And I think that's ultimately going to tell us a lot because my thesis hasn't changed. If we range between the 80 and 60K region, I think that there's a good possibility that this was the bottom. The 58K meme was the bottom. If we break down then I think that there is a possibility that we're going to head to new lows. But if you are a Bitcoiner and you're denominating your net worth in Bitcoin, that is a positive and not a negative, because that gives you more gunpowder to buy cheap sats. So again, my question to you is the same. Are you a tourist or are you here for the revolution? If you're here for the revolution, these opportunities come very rarely. They come every 4 years so that you can get really, really cheap, discounted Bitcoin. The only question is, do you have the conviction? Do you have the belief? And my message is to the new classes. If you're class of 2025, you're probably not having a very good experience right now. You have to pay your price of tuition. You have to pay your dues. Michael Saylor is no different. Bitcoin treats everybody the same. Doesn't matter whether you're a nation state, doesn't matter whether you're Wall Street, doesn't matter whether you're Michael Saylor. You have to pay your price of tuition. That's it. I never forget Michael Saylor getting into Bitcoin 2020, 2021. He rode the wave from, the low all the way up to 69K, whatever it was. And then I'll never forget watching him in the first row of Pacific Bitcoin. He was down billions, like he is right now. He was down billions of dollars on his investment. His stock price wasn't doing too hot. And I remember he was just silently listening to all the panels that were occurring on stage on his laptop. And then fast forward a couple years later, he was completely vindicated. His stock ripped from it was like $20 in the low of the bear market and went all the way up to $500. And if you look at strategy today, it's $85. I'm not a stonk buyer, but I mean, if you don't learn from the past, you're destined to repeat it, right? So this is kind of where we are in the movie. Like I said, I think it's an opportunity for those who have conviction, for those who are revolutionaries, for those who do zoom out, for those who do remember why we are here. And again, I think the summer is really going to determine what direction Bitcoin's going to head in. So yeah, anyways, guys, it's going to be an incredible show. I'm going to be at the helm today. Optis has a well-deserved day off. He has some things that he's going to take care of. And we have a lot to cover today, so you guys are going to want to stay tuned. So first of all, we have this great video from Neil Oliver, and he's talking about digital IDs and CBDCs, and he's basically saying something very similar to what I've been saying these last couple months, which is basically like, look, the digital ID and CBDC system is inherently unnecessary. Like, what problem does it solve? I can tell you what problem it solves. It solves the problem for governments that want a continuation of the fiat system. The fiat system is a system that needs coercion in order for people to sign up and to go along with it. If it doesn't have coercion and people have an option between a deflationary censorship-resistant money, which is Bitcoin, versus a censorship-prone and controlled money, if people had an option between the two, what do you think they're going to choose? And if you want to know why they're rolling out that tax in Illinois, we had the fellows from the Illinois Bitcoin Council yesterday talking about it. You want to know why they're rolling out that tax in Illinois? It's to de-incentivize people from using Bitcoin as a non-sovereign alternative peer-to-peer. That's it. Full stop. It has nothing to do with raising the tax revenue for the state. It has nothing to do with that. It's to de-incentivize people. Same thing in the European Union applies. The reason they don't want people using cash, the reason they don't want people transacting Bitcoin peer-to-peer over $10,000 is because they want people to stay within the system they can control. Governments get a tremendous amount of power from being able to issue their own currencies and being able to control the money flows. So don't let anybody gaslight you. Ultimately, all this tax policy, all this talk about, oh, it's about protecting the kids. You need to now show your ID to sign up for a social media platform. That's all BS. That's to keep you in a cage. I tweeted this out this morning. I said, listen, there is no in between. And I fundamentally believe in my heart that is true. What do I mean by that? There's Bitcoin and then there's slavery. That's it. There's no middle ground. Full stop. They're getting rid of cash and the continuation of the fiat system the inflationary system, the nihilistic system, the system that funds endless wars, the system that steals from you is central bank digital currencies. And I think every country around the world is looking at what China is doing and they're salivating at the mouth and they're like, yeah, that would be great. We get to continue to print money. And not only that, we have even more control over our citizens. And make no mistake, are they going to roll out something exactly like China? No, but I think they're going to try to roll out something like a China light model. I remember I was just in Europe about a week ago or about a week or so ago. And I remember it was the craziest thing, like going through customs. Usually when you go through customs, you know, you take out your passport and then they stamp it, right? Like that's the experience that you usually like go through. They got rid of all of that. It's all biometric now. You step into the little gate, the gate doors close behind you, the gate doors in front of you don't close. It's like this humiliation ritual. Then you stand in front of a camera. The camera scans your face, and then it gives you a little check mark, and then the little cattle pen gates open. Like, it's the most dystopian thing you can imagine, man. Like, that's crazy. Like, we're human beings, right? And then I was like, okay, maybe this is just a Europe thing. And then coming back to the United States, it wasn't as bad. There was no cattle pen, but it was the same thing. It was biometric. There was no customs person that you just go, show your passport, they look at your face, and they're like, hey, where you been? They ask you a little bit of questions. They give you a stamp. No. You literally go up to a camera. The camera scans your face. And it's like, okay, you're good to go. That's where the world is heading. That's what they want. That's the system of control. When I mean slavery, that's what I mean. I mean a system in a world where you can't use the internet without identifying yourself. You can't use money without identifying yourself. And the amount of control that is going to give the state, no person, bureaucracy, government deserves that amount of control. The founding fathers ultimately understood this. This is why they built the United States of America the way they built it. They built it with a system of checks and balances because they knew that unchecked government will inevitably lead to tyranny. That's why the First Amendment is the freedom of speech. That's why the Second Amendment is the right to bear arms. They created the Constitution not to protect the government, but to protect the people from what the government can become. And CBDCs is a highway to that. It enables that. It's a bureaucrat's wet dream. It's the last piece of the puzzle. And we, as sovereign individuals, as freedom-minded individuals, as Bitcoiners, we have a choice. We can say no. And we don't have to ask permission to say no. We don't have to wait for an election to say no. All you have to do is take your Bitcoin and put it into self-custody. You're opting out of the system when you do that. And if you want to know how much that scares them, when the IMF gave El Salvador one of their loans, one of the specific conditions that they set for El Salvador was that El Salvador had to remove officially, even though you could still use Bitcoin in the country, had to remove Bitcoin as legal tender. And the reason that they were so hell-bent on that idea was because from their perspective, if Bitcoin is equal to fiat currencies in terms of legal tender status, that is a fundamental threat to their worldview. Because their worldview is based on the fact that everybody is coerced into using a money they can debase and they can control. The debasement part, I think, is the most important part. And it's the most sinister part. And it's the most harmful part. And the reason for that is because that is ultimately how these governments pay for themselves. Yes, they pay them for themselves partly through tax revenue, but they spend more than they collect in tax revenue. So how do they pay for the difference? They print the difference. And that isn't free. You pay for that via currency debasement. And that is the number one cause for wealth inequality in these countries. That is the number one reason you can't afford rent and you can't afford housing. That is the number one reason as to why food and groceries and all of those things get more expensive. It's literally money printing. And there isn't a political solution to this, as much as they would like you to think that. Oh, it's about taxing the billionaires. It's about, taxing the this. No. It has nothing to do with that. It's literally because the government has the ability to create money for free that everyone else has to work for. That is the root cause of society's ills right now. The number one cause. If you fix that, everything else takes care of itself. So you have to pay attention. You have to keep your eye on the ball. You have to remember why you're here. And bear markets are fantastic for that because it clears out the tourists, and it's only the fundamentalists, the maximalists that stay behind because you know why you're here. You want a better future for your children. You want a better future for yourself. You want a future filled with hope, not a future filled with despair and nihilism. And that is what Bitcoin ultimately gives you back. It gives you back your time. It gives you hope for the future. If you denominate your net worth in Bitcoin, everything around you, despite all the manipulations that are happening in fiat currencies, everything around you gets progressively cheaper. Whether that's housing, whether that's food, anything. It gets progressively cheaper if you denominate your net worth in Bitcoin. So this is what the fight is all about. This is why my statement of Bitcoin or slavery, it's not a hyperbolic one. I'm being 100% serious. But ultimately, I think they will fail. And the reason I think they will fail is because their system is a system based on coercion. And our system is based on incentives. And historically speaking, because there is historical precedent, the system based on voluntary participation because of the incentives will always beat the system based on a coercive system that essentially forces you to use something you don't want to use under the threat of violence. So I think we're going to win, but I think things are going to get a little bit rocky. I think we took a little bit of a detour this cycle, with the introduction of the ETFs and the introduction of Wall Street getting involved. And I think it's important, this bear market, to remember why we are all here, to remember the ultimate goal, to remember the ultimate mission. And that mission is the separation of money and state. And that, I think, fundamentally will make the world a much better place. And that's why we're here. That's what we're fighting for. This is a peaceful revolution. Doesn't require violence. Just requires you opting out. Anyways, like I said, it's going to be a great show. We're going to further explore this topic and many other topics as well. I have an update for you guys on the Clarity Act. And then we're going to do a quick vibe check towards the end. I want to get your guys' pulse. I want to go through the comments, see what everybody else is thinking. Maybe they disagree with me. Maybe they agree with me. So you guys are going to want to stay tuned in. Smash that like button. Consider subscribing if you guys are enjoying the show so far. We're going to be right back in just a little bit.
Here's the part that nobody says out loud. Buying Bitcoin on an exchange and leaving it there isn't buying Bitcoin. It's buying an IOU. And the last decade has been a masterclass in what happens when those exchanges don't deliver on their promises.
Bitcoin Well is a self-custody Bitcoin platform. That means that when you buy Bitcoin, it goes straight to your self-custody Bitcoin wallet. You actually own it from the very first transaction. They're available both in the United States and Canada. Pricing is transparent, straightforward, and no nonsense. And if you're buying a larger amount of Bitcoin, Bitcoin Well Infinite gives you concierge-level support through a dedicated executive Bitcoin advisor, premium help for when it actually matters.
You can also stack a little extra through the referral and wishing well rewards. A nice bonus on top of the owning your own Bitcoin thing. So go to bitcoinwell.com/simply and sign up for the Bitcoin Well portal today and buy Bitcoin you actually own. Paper burns. paper floods, paper fades. If your seed phrase is written on paper, it's not really backed up. It's waiting to disappear. Stampseed's DIY kit lets you hammer your seed words directly into commercial grade titanium. Fireproof, crush-proof, waterproof, and permanent. Once your words are in the metal, they aren't going anywhere. Use code SIMPLY at stampseed.com for 15% off anything in the store. That's stampseed.com, code SIMPLY.
All right, everybody, we are back. At the time of recording, the Bitcoin price is $60,090. Block height is 955,525. Market cap, 1.2 trillion. Bitcoin versus gold market cap, 4%. Decline from all-time high, we're down 52.4%. So if you're buying Bitcoin right now, you're getting a 52% discount. Anyways, I saw this incredible clip. I do want to give him credit, so let me mention his name. But before I get into that, I do want to give a very special shout out to our sponsor, the Rumble Wallet. Guys, as content creators, we depend on platforms. I know everyone is talking about Nostr. Nostr is an incredible protocol, but the reality is that we're a media company, and the volume in terms of viewership lives on YouTube, Rumble, and X. What I love about Rumble is that it's a freedom-focused platform. And what I also admire about Rumble, and I'm so bullish about Rumble, is that they rolled out a non-custodial Bitcoin wallet. So if you want to tip your favorite creators, you could tip them directly to them. And Rumble can't take away that money. It goes straight to your creator's non-custodial wallet. If you go to Rumble right now, use the link down below. There's a special Simply Bitcoin promo. And just for downloading the wallet, they'll give you $10. Just for downloading the Rumble wallet, do it right now. You will get $10. Make sure to use the promo in the video/podcast description. I love the Rumble platform. It's fantastic. It's free speech video platform. It's amazing. They just rolled out a wallet, and it's a non-custodial one. So again, download it, support your favorite content creators, and you could just use it as a wallet yourself. It gives you the seed phrase. You could export that seed phrase to another wallet. You could take it with you. Rumble can't freeze the funds. Again, that's the way that, in my opinion, my humble opinion, the incentive structure should be built out. Because even if the platform wants to, they physically could not freeze the money that you're receiving from your fans, even if they wanted to. So download the Rumble wallet today. Again, use the link in the video/podcast description. And if you use the promo code, you will get $10 just for downloading it. Anyways, here is Neil Oliver, and he's essentially coming to the same conclusion. He goes down a more philosophical route in his reasoning as to why he doesn't believe that digital IDs and CBDCs will work out and that they're ultimately doomed. Now, I will caveat this with, I think he is being slightly optimistic, and the reason I'm saying that is because, like, ultimately, like, look at China, right? Like, your society can find itself in a situation where if certain political things play out the way they do, you know, you can find yourself in a technocratic, feudalistic slavery system. Like, it's not that it is impossible. It can happen. And this is why, you know, unfortunately, we're kind of forced to talk about politics sometimes, because if you do live in a society where you're able to vote, it's probably a good idea to vote for the person that's not going to go after your industry and go after your bags, right? Now, is it ideal? No, I don't think it's ideal. But it's much better than voting for the other side that just completely wants to destroy your industry. So I do agree with him in the sense that, yes, a system based on coercion is ultimately doomed to fail. I do agree with him that a system that, like, Why are digital IDs really improving society? Is a central bank digital currency really solving a problem? No. Digital IDs and CBDCs are a reaction to the internet. The nation state model wasn't prepared for the internet. The nation state model that used to be able to control all the media flows, that completely went away with the introduction of the internet. That's why the EU is going after Elon Musk the way it is. That's why even in the United States, with the previous administration, they wanted to roll out a Ministry of Truth. They wanted to, and it came out in the X-Files. The United States government, even though this is explicitly against the First Amendment, was asking social media platforms to censor the free speech of Americans. The way that the system worked wasn't prepared for peer-to-peer, a mass-scale peer-to-peer communications. And that said, that same system is also not prepared for mass-scale peer-to-peer money. So they're trying to get ahead of it. And the way that they get ahead of it is, hey, every time you log onto the internet, we want to see your ID. It's for the children. It's for your own protection. Every time you got to use money, you got to use a CBDC. You got to use the money that we tell you to do. Like, that wasn't part of the social contract. Like, the whole reason we trusted government with money in the first place was because at least we had control over that government. At least that government was supposed to represent us. But I think that a government ultimately can't represent the people as long as it issues its own currency. As long as a government is able to print, it's not a representative government. It's a government that's going to try to do everything in its power in order to continue to keep its ability to print money, to fund themselves. Because then there's no accountability. They're not accountable to anybody. They don't have to be accountable to anybody because they already have a revenue source. If you have a government that is under a sound money system, the only way that that government is able to raise revenue is through direct taxation. And when it's direct taxation, you can only increase the taxes so much before the people say, hey, wait a second, what do you mean we're gonna go to another war and you're gonna increase my taxes by 5%? I kind of don't agree with that war. What are you talking about? The reason that they're able to get away with all of this stuff is because people are ultimately not informed. They ultimately don't understand that inflation is a form of taxation. Inflation is taxation without representation. So anyways, here's Neil Oliver. It's about a 2-minute clip. Let's see if we can get through all of it. But I thought it was fantastic. Let's check it out.
I would say that despite what people are being led to fear, what people are being led to believe, the technocracy, the digital ID, the digital cage, all of the infrastructure, the central bank digital currencies, the mood music is that all of that is inescapable, and that once the door closes shut on the digital cage, that we're all trapped inside it forever. But I think that's just propaganda. That is the heart of the propaganda. Because without the cooperation of the people, and that cooperation based ultimately on trust, ultimately I suppose because there's something in it for the people, it won't work. It won't work. Talk about a lot of us were taught to believe in a social contract whereby people accept certain limitations, they obey the law, they cooperate with law and legislation because there's something in it for them. And the something that's in it for them, well, it's all the benefits of society. It's peace. It's being able to walk down the street at night. It's known that there'll be food in the shops. It's known that the lights will come on and the bins will be emptied. It's known that your children will be safe, that you can let them out of the house and go about their lives safely. And that's the social contract. But the social contract has been corrupted. It's been soiled and traduced. And I would say that counter to the mood music, and despite what the technocrats would like us to think, and perhaps think that we think, all of it will fail. All of it will fail because the trust is gone. And you cannot force governance on millions or billions of people. It just won't work.
See, that's the part where I disagree with him on, right? And then there's case studies for this, right? There's examples. Like, look at North Korea. You have a society that is completely controlled by a dictatorship that has been in power for decades. They control what people think. They control what information people consume. They control what people eat. Look at China. It's not as bad as North Korea, but it's the same thing. If you're in China, do you think you can criticize the Chinese government? Look at what happened in Hong Kong with the protests. Hell no. Hell no. And if you don't wake up and realize that the EU is heading down the same path, and there's certain political parties in the United States that would want that here as well, you're asleep or you're watching CNN. I mean, both things are the same, I guess you could make that argument, right? So we have to remember, yes, ultimately he's right. A coercive system would fail if left to its own devices. I mean, we saw the fall of the Soviet Union. It only took 70 years, but we ultimately did see the fall of the Soviet Union, which was the ultimate coercive system, right? There's a reason that people were jumping from East Berlin to West Berlin and not from West Berlin to East Berlin. There's a reason that, I live in Miami. People risk their lives to get on a raft to go from Cuba to Miami, not from Miami to Cuba. I think humans innately want freedom. I think it's like built into their DNA, right? So I do agree with him in the sense that, yes, it will fail, but I think he's also being a little bit naive in terms of, like, I don't think he fully comprehends how far these people are willing to take it. Because if we do win, and I think we will win, the people in power are going to have a very different role in society. The accountability is going to go up. Them having to answer to their citizens is going to be a thing. And we live in a society right now where that's not the case. I ultimately don't think politicians answer to their constituents. I don't think we live in representative governments, even though we get told this all the time, democracy, 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 this, democracy, that. I don't think that's the actual system we live in. I think we live in a completely different system. I think we have the illusion that that's the system. I think we have the underlying foundation that was built, at least here in the United States. But what it's become since the establishment of the Federal Reserve, man, it would have the founding fathers rolling in their graves. When the Federal Reserve was established in 1913, the U.S. government represented about 3% of the GDP. Today, the U.S. government represents 25% of the GDP. And remember, government ultimately is not productive. Government doesn't produce anything. Government takes. So I agree with him that if left to their own devices, if, we had this perfect utopian society where, they just said, okay, you know what? They found better money. We're going to win. Let's just go with it. I think he'd be right. But I think he underestimates how far these people are willing to take it in order to remain in power. And I think that is a little bit naive on his end. So again, we're in a bear market. It's like, what is Nico talking about? It's talking about CBDCs, digital IDs. Guys, it all goes hand in hand. Because while everyone was distracted about the treasury companies and number go up and getting rich and whatever, we forgot why we are here. We forgot why we're here. We are here to fix the money, fix the world. And if you have Bitcoin in self-custody, you are a revolutionary. Even if you're not aware of it. Because you are taking your money out of the coercive system. You're taking your energy and your time and you're reclaiming it. That's what you're doing. So, still a great clip. I admire him a lot as a creator. I think he has great takes. And I think that's a great take. And I agree with him. But I also think we have to be attentive. We have to be paying attention. We can't just, sleep on the job and just say, hey, guys, we found better money. Bitcoin's here. We're going to win. No. You always have to be attentive. We always have to be on guard. We always have to remember what's at stake. We always have to remember what we're fighting for. Because ultimately, that's how we win. And this isn't a movement based on one individual. This is a movement based on all of us. And there will be martyrs. There will be people that get persecuted. I mean, we saw this with, Bitcoin/crypto entrepreneurs getting jailed under the previous administration. We saw this with the Samurai Wallet developers who are currently in jail for developing open source software. But like every revolution, next man up. Next man up. Don't ask what Bitcoin could do for you. Ask what you can do for Bitcoin. And by doing so, you're going to make the network stronger. You're going to position your family in a much better place. We have to remember why we're fighting for this. We have to remember why we're here. And we got a little bit distracted. We got a little bit off track. But this is why the bear markets are so beautiful. Because they remind you why we're here. And the people that stick around are the true believers. They're the true maximalists. They're the true fundamentalists. And those are the ones that are going to be rewarded the most. Anyways, guys, we're going to be right back just after the break. Quick update on the Clarity Act. Stay tuned. Smash the like button if you guys are enjoying the show. We'll be right back. I want to give a shout out to our partner, Ledin. Here's something most Bitcoin holders never figure out until it's too late. You're sitting on wealth you can't touch without selling. Ledin fixes that. Bitcoin-backed loans. You keep your stack, you get cash. And they just introduced their lowest rates ever. No complexity, no fine print. The larger the loan, the lower the rate. These new rates apply to all new loans, refinances, and renewals. You'll see all the rates up front before you apply. The new, lower rates come with Ledin's gold standard protection. Your Bitcoin remains custodied and is never lent out for interest. Perfect 8-year track record of keeping clients' assets safe. Auto top-ups, LTV alerts, and partial repayments to keep you in control. Repay whenever you want with zero penalties or monthly payments. Ledin's perfect $10 billion track record through every market cycle in the last 8 years speaks for itself. Don't choose between a great rate and the safety of your Bitcoin. Get both at Ledin. If you ever thought, what happens to my Bitcoin if something happens to me? Or what happens if I lose my phone? You're not alone. For a lot of people, the biggest barrier to self-custody isn't buying Bitcoin. It's the fear of making a mistake. And that's why I like BitKey and I recommend it to my friends and family. BitKey is a Bitcoin wallet built for real life. Not just for day one, but for everything that happens in between. Lost devices, upgrades, accidents, and long-term ownership. There's no seed phrase to write down and worry about losing. And no single point of failure that can lock you out of your Bitcoin forever. What really stands out about BitKey is the peace of mind. Recovery is built in. Inheritance is built in. It's a complete self-custody system built by the team behind Square and Cash App, designed to make holding your own Bitcoin simpler and safer. Take self-custody of your Bitcoin today using Bitkey. Go to bitkey.world and use promo code SIMPLY for 10% off your new Bitkey. That's bitkey.world, promo code SIMPLY. All right, everybody, we are back. Let's jump into the next news topic. Here we go. Great article, great work. I'm a huge fan of Alex. Great work by Alex Thorne of Galaxy. And he has a quick update for us regarding the Clarity Act. And you guys know my opinion on the Clarity Act. Does Bitcoin need the Clarity Act for it to succeed? No. Do Bitcoin entrepreneurs benefit from the Clarity Act passing? 100%. Will the price benefit from the Clarity Act passing? 100%. If the Clarity Act doesn't get passed right now, I don't think, at least until 2028, and then it's still a coin flip, right? Because U.S. elections are essentially a coin flip. And as we learned from our friends over at the Illinois Bitcoin Institute yesterday, it seems, unfortunately, and again, you guys know I'm a single issue voter. If you guys have opinions on anything else politically that doesn't have to do with Bitcoin, you're tuned into the wrong show. Tune into like Tim Pool or something, or like Tucker or whatever. We're going to focus on Bitcoin here. And unfortunately, the reality of the situation, and this is a midterm year, by the way, it seems like the Democratic Party has not changed, and this is not monolithic. I know Ro Khanna has different thoughts on this, and he's a Democrat, but it seems like by and large, the power players in the Democratic Party have not changed their stance on Bitcoin. So as a single issue voter, I'm going to continue voting Republican, not because I completely agree with the Republican Party, not because I agree with their policies, but I'm going to be honest here, because I'm going to vote for my bags. Because if you fix the money, everything else is downstream from that. Whether it's wealth inequality, the endless wars, all of that stuff. If you fix the money, all of those other things get fixed. Sound money is the solution to this, ladies and gentlemen. So, back to the Clarity Act. Is the Clarity Act important for Bitcoin? No. Bitcoin's going to TikTok next block. It's going to keep going. Is the Clarity Act important for Bitcoin businesses and Bitcoin entrepreneurs in the United States? 100%. Is the Clarity Act potentially going to be bullish for the price? 100%. So I just want to caveat that before we get into it. So Alex Thorne released an article on X reducing Clarity odds as Senate calendar tightens. President Trump said Wednesday he won't sign a housing bill unless Congress passes the SAVE Act. The SAVE Act is the voting thing where you require, which is kind of weird. Like, why wouldn't you require voter ID? But anyhow, strange, right? Anyhow, you read between the lines there. Intensifying competition for scarce Senate floor time and thereby hurting the Clarity Act's odds. There's little new to report on the Clarity Act this week, and the absence of news itself is the news. Since our June 5th note cutting our passages odds to 60%, the bill has sat on this Senate legislative calendar as item number 423, where it has been since June 1st, after clearing Senate banking 15-9 on May 14th. No floor debate has been set, and no motion to proceed has been scheduled. Reconciliation of the Banking and Agricultural Committee text continues at the staff level, and there are some indications that constructive negotiations continue. But there has been no public announcement that Banking and Agriculture has agreed on a combined bill, no release of a unified legislative text, and no signal on timing for floor consideration. And ladies and gentlemen, let me remind you, time is running out. The midterms are in November. The substantive issue we have flagged remained roughly where they were. Ethics is still a central open question. The Van Hollen Conflict of Interest Amendment failed 11-13 in committee. And Senator Gallego and broker continue to insist on enforceable standards as a condition of their support. The illicit finance hawks still want further changes on the developer protection language. Competition for floor time intensified this week. On June 24th, the president abruptly canceled the signing of the bipartisan housing bill, which has passed 358 to 32 in the House and 85 to 5 in the Senate, and said he would not sign it until Congress passed the SAVE Act, a proof of citizenship elections bill that Majority Leader Thune has said lacks the votes to pass the Senate. That condition injects another contentious, leadership-consuming fight into an already crowded queue, and two must-do items also remain unfinished. Section 702 of FISA lapsed on June 12th after the Senate and House failed to pass a reauthorization, and a bipartisan Grassley Cotton Warner product still needs floor time. And the FY 227 NDAA, the annual must-pass defense bill, also has to move before the recess. What is Galaxy's take on this? We are lowering our estimates that Clarity Act becomes law in 2026 to 50-50, down from 60%. The downgrade is primarily related to the calendar, not the substance of the bill. The recess is scheduled to begin at the end of July. For a 60-vote bill, that still needs a merged banking agriculture text, a motion to proceed, floor debate, an amendment process, and then the House action on whatever the Senate produces. The runway is quickly declining into just a matter of weeks. In our view, Senate Majority Leader Thune needs to announce floor time by early July at the latest, possibly during the July 4th recess, with the vote itself occurring before the August recess. Absent a scheduling announcement on that timeline, the path slips to September, which runs directly into the midterm dynamics we have warned about, which we've also been warning about on Simply Bitcoin, when controversial votes become very hard to schedule. So what's interesting to me is how fast they passed the Clarity Act. The Genius Act, because again, that would allow the propagation of the US dollar around the world via stablecoins. And then the specific Bitcoin/crypto bill, they've been dragging their feet on. And to use Senator Lummis's own words on this, she said in her whole career in politics, this has been the hardest bill she has worked on ever. And this goes back to the central theme that I've been talking about throughout the entire show. Ultimately, if you're part of the government, Elizabeth Warren is saying this bluntly, at least she's being honest about it. Do you really want Bitcoin to be further entwined within the traditional financial system? Because if it's further entwined with the traditional financial system and the financial system is benefiting from Bitcoin, what incentive do those financial institutions that have a tremendous amount of lobbying power in DC have to roll back that? If BlackRock is making a fortune, if Charles Schwab is going to start making a fortune off brokerage fees on Bitcoin, why in the hell would they even listen to what Elizabeth Warren has to say? They'd say like, hey, go outside, get some sun, touch some grass. Like, we don't care. We're making money off of this. Let's take a look at the betting odds. You guys know that I love the betting odds because people actually put money on the line. It went from an all-time high in May 8th. It had a 74% chance of passing. There's $1.4 million worth of volume. So nice chunk of change on the line. It's gone all the way down to 45%. So again, to summarize, does Bitcoin need the Clarity Act? No. Bitcoin doesn't need any government. Bitcoin doesn't need anybody. The protocol was designed that way. But if you're a Bitcoin business in the United States, this is going to give you protections, specifically against potentially future hostile administrations. And it's also going to give institutions clarity so that they feel confident and get involved into the industry. And also, the tragic part about all of this is that the major, obstacle in this passing is the fact that Jamie Dimon doesn't want people using alternative financial platforms to make interest on their deposits. And he's saying it's for consumer protection, but that's total BS, because he doesn't want competition. And that is the most, I've said this before, this is the most cartel-like behavior, where they're using their influence and the heavy hand of government to get the outcome that they want. They don't want to compete on the free market. They're using government to do their bidding. And that should tell you everything you need to know. The bankers are doing the government to do their bidding. Is the Clarity Act not is this in the best interest of the American people? Are the bankers the one that represent the American people, or is it the American people that's supposed to be represented in Washington? I'll drop that question to you guys. So, yes, I mean, it does look a little bit grim here. I think this is going to take a little bit longer than we expected. And, you know, this is why I keep saying, and I'm going to keep saying it, even though it's very unpopular in the Bitcoin circles, like, ultimately, elections have consequences. Fiat, I call them fiat elections. Fiat elections have consequences. So if you think, and Opti took this stance, and I got very upset with him, because he was like, look, like, I'm not voting for Trump. And Trump's not perfect. Like, he launched the meme coin. We got involved in another war in the Middle East. Like, there's a bunch of blunders with Trump. But if you were to choose, because it's a two-party system in the United States, and I'm sure it's we have an international audience. I'm sure it's somewhat similar in your guys' countries. If you had a choice between people that literally are anti-Bitcoin, pro-CBDC versus pro-Bitcoin, anti-CBDC, I'm going to pick the pro-Bitcoin, anti-CBDC side every time, even if there's a little bit of shitcoinery in there. Because there's only two choices. And at least we got a positive outcome out of this. We got Ross Ulbricht out of jail. That is how powerful our movement is. So anyone who tells you that voting, fiat voting, that's because that's what it is. Anyone who tells you that fiat voting is not important, that's utter, I'm calling bullshit there. It's BS. Of course it's important. If we didn't come up as a collective, as a voting bloc, to get Donald J. Trump in office, Ross Ulbricht would still be in jail today. Is it perfect? No. Politics, by definition, is messy. Politics is the organization of power. So obviously it's going to be messy. Obviously it's not going to be perfect. But are we making progress? I would say absolutely. We went from an administration that was doing everything in their power to jail us, to try to shut us down, to sabotage the industry in 100 different ways. And we went to an administration that was posting from their X account that they want to make the United States the Bitcoin capital of the world. And they freed Ross. And they signed the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve executive order. Like, come on now. Anyone who doesn't tell you that fiat voting isn't important, I think is naive, to put it nicely, at best. So these midterms, I think it's incredibly important to find out who your representative is if you live in the United States, and vote for representative. Doesn't matter whether it's Democrat or Republican. They tend to be Republican, but it doesn't matter. That is actually representing your bags. Is actually representing you in Washington. Are they pro-Bitcoin or are they anti-Bitcoin? That's the only question you should ask. If you're anti-Bitcoin, I'm not voting for you. If you're pro-Bitcoin and you're a Democrat, I'm going to vote for you any day. I don't care. Ultimately, it doesn't matter. because we're working towards something that I think is going to take a very long time. This is a very well-entrenched system. This system has been around since 1913. It's been more than 100 years. And I would say that the central bank experiment has been an utter catastrophe. The biggest world wars in human history have occurred under central banking. The biggest depressions, the biggest recessions, the highest wealth inequality has all happened under central banking. So that experiment has failed. The problem is it's too well entrenched. So to use Hayek's quote, we have to find a clear roundabout way to get money out of the hands of government. And that's Bitcoin. And it's only Bitcoin. It's not stablecoins. It's Bitcoin. Because Bitcoin is the only cryptocurrency that is actually decentralized. And if it's not truly decentralized, it will inevitably be co-opted. So you need something that's truly decentralized and secure, and that the only thing that exists is Bitcoin right now. And you can make the argument for physical gold as well, but physical gold has limitations because of its physical characteristics. Anyways, guys, we're going to end it up with the culture segment. I'm going to go through all the comments because I haven't really been paying attention because I've been hosting the show for you guys. We're just going to have a discussion and we'll wrap it up. And then we're going to enjoy our weekends. Again, if you guys are enjoying the show so far, make sure to smash that like button. Consider subscribing to Simply Bitcoin. And we're going to be right back just after the quick break. I want to give a shout out to our partner, HIVE Digital Technologies. Fueled by clean energy across 3 continents, HIVE runs dual engines, Bitcoin mining and AI compute. Their AI platform is ranked #1 in the world for network performance, and it's doing something bigger than compute. It's accelerating human discovery, the science, the breakthroughs, pushing humanity further and faster. Listed on the NASDAQ with the ticker HIVE. Catch the latest buzz at HIVE Digital Tech on X or HIVEdigitaltech.com. You secured your Bitcoin, but did you secure your devices too? They're still broadcasting your location and digital footprint. GPS, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, cell, 5G, EMF, all of it is leaking. Escape Zone fixes that. Their Faraday bags block every signal your device emits, so you decide when you're detectable, not the grid. Built for Bitcoiners who know sovereignty isn't just your wallet. It's your phone, your hardware wallet, your keys, and your entire digital life. Go to escapezone.com/simply and use code SIMPLY for 10% off. That's escapezone.com/simply, code SIMPLY. All right, everybody, we're back. I'm going to go through some of the comments that I'm sure that I missed. So let's go. Jim Johnson on Rumble says, USA is not the greatest. I mean, I agree. I think the original vision of the United States was fantastic. As a first-generation American whose parents came from Venezuela, I love this country. I love not the government of this country, not what the country has become, but the idea of America, the idea of limited government, the idea of individual freedom. I love that. It's very unique to the United States. I also love the fact that each state has different level of autonomy over the federal government, right? Like California has its own laws, Florida has its own laws. I really like that. It's very unique to the U.S. Let's see more comments. AOC ignores the laws of gravity. That's hilarious. What is the First Amendment? You know what the First Amendment is, bro. Why are you asking me that? Yep, only 2 choices. That is true freedom with Bitcoin or slavery with fiat dollars. Completely agree. JN240750. Let me see. Yeah, Opti is taking a romantic getaway with Christine Lagarde. That's hilarious. Let's see more comments. All right, that was the Rumble chat. Let's check out YouTube. Here we go. Can't remember the last time only Nico episode liking it. Well, I appreciate it, man. I mean, it has been a long time since I've hosted an episode by myself. It's actually feels really, really good. This reminds me of the old days when it was when I was doing mostly everything here at Simply in the very, very early days. Someone else in the comment, I love America. I agree with that. I love the idea of America. I don't like what America has become with the money printer. Down Under Blue says Trump is attempting to reestablish the original form of the United States. He's not a politician, but an American with a vision. I don't know how much he can do that though. Like, I know that that's what he claims he wants to do. Like, he says he wants an income tax and whatever, but like, I just think that the system's too well entrenched. Keep the price low at any cost. See, that's a true Bitcoiner right there. Shout out to you, my friend. If you're anti-Bitcoin, I am voting for you. Only multiple Bitcoin owners want the price to go up. The biggest burritos are built under central banking. That could be true. Could be true. Single party voters are complete morons. How so? Down Under Blues, please explain. How so? Would Kamala pump our bags? I mean, I think that's a really funny comment. I was making a joke because, like, one of the things that Trump promised was that if he got elected, you know, Bitcoin was going to go to the moon. And we had the first pro-Bitcoin president, and the price is dumping, right? So I'm like, you know, I was making a joke. I was like, cackling Kamala, like maybe the price would have gone up with that, right? So yeah, but like, please explain yourself, man, because I don't understand. I also agree. America is still the land of opportunity, 100%. If you're an entrepreneur, I think the United States is amazing. Also, Dubai is great. Singapore. I'm bullish on El Salvador. Would this channel become pro-government? No, not at all. It's just like, unfortunately, it's a two-party system, right? And Keaton8182 says, classic lesser of the two eagles argument from a statist. Listen, man, you could choose not to participate in politics, but politics is going to affect your life. Like, you could say, oh, I'm too good to vote. I'm just gonna chime out. If that's your take, bro, if all of us thought that way, Ross would still be in prison. So I'm sorry, I just don't buy that argument. Next one. Goudston says, I'm voting for the candidate that will tank BTC price the most, equals more sats for my shitcoin dollar. I mean, amen to that, brother. I there we go. I like that. Jeremiah says, you nailed it right on the head. Pro Bitcoin, anti CBDC. Thanks, man. I really believe that. Not voting for Trump. Sorry, dude. Listen, man, you're totally entitled to do whatever you want. I'm just giving you my opinion. Trump is a douche. I mean, I wasn't a big fan of the Trump meme coin. I personally was so let down when I heard about the war in Iran. So Trump is definitely not perfect. But I'm a big Trump supporter because I think he's been a net positive for Bitcoin compared to where we were. We have several reports that the Clarity Act is about to be finished and agreed upon. The bank yield issue is resolved. The current contention is the ethics clause. Interesting. Okay, so I might have an update for you guys on Monday. Opti has a romantic weekend away with Christine. That's hilarious. I don't think Opti's dating Christine anymore. I think he's moved on. I got to give an update for you guys here. 80% of all voters want the Save America Act to pass. It's corrupt politicians that don't want it to pass. I mean, look, like, just using a little bit of common sense here, right? Like, why wouldn't you want IDs for voting? You know, I don't want to get into that rabbit hole, but like, I don't quite understand that. Can't read that, dude. I'm sorry. We're on YouTube. Clarity Act is just grease for the wheels of the machines that is eternal. I would tend to agree with that. Elizabeth Warren is a stick in the mud. No one cares what you vote for. Fight back, join the revolution, take your power back and stack sats, fight back. Amen, brother. That's where we're here. Let me see what else. fed up of government telling me what I can and cannot do. I'm good to every human being I come across. I completely agree. Like, I don't know if you guys saw this, but like there's this big discussion in the European Union where like they're basically saying like you can't put your temperature down. If you have an air conditioning, you can't put your temperature down. Like, these are the same people that want to trust you with a central bank digital currency. It's like they can't even trust you with an air conditioner. They can't even trust you on social media without you verifying your ID. But at the same time, they want you to trust you with money. And they're like, hey, trust me, bro. We're not going to censor it. Like, yeah, okay, sure. Fix the money, fix the world. Absolutely.